basis. Almost pretty much every day I'm answering questions about the content of this course. So feel free also to pop in and questions. If you have questions, pop them into the chat and I'll answer questions at the end. I also have set time aside at the end of this presentation because I know that there's going to be a lot of questions. So we do have time for questions at the end of the proceedings. Okay, so today's course is aimed at simplifying the Basic Conditions of Employment Act and the National Minimum Wages Act to give you a practical understanding. The law is written in a very complex and difficult to understand manner, and specifically our Basic Conditions of Employment Act, it's very misunderstood. So my aim with today's course is to give you a practical understanding of how to interpret the things that the Basic Conditions of Employment Act and the National Minimum Wage Act refer to. And it matters because non-compliance risks you as a company, and the better understanding protects both employers and employees. For example, people misunderstand annual leave and they end up giving much more than the legal entitlement because they misunderstand the wording of annual leave. So it can actually be costly to misunderstand what the Basic Conditions of Employment Act says. Right, what is the Basic Conditions of Employment Act? It's South Africa's key law on employment conditions, T's and C's, terms and conditions of employment, contained in the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. It sets the minimum standards of employment, so you as an employer are free to negotiate higher or different standards. You may just not go below what the Basic Conditions prescribes. It supersedes workplace agreements between employer and employee. So you can't agree with your employee in your employment contract that the Basic Conditions of Employment Act doesn't apply. Or you can't agree with your employee that they only get 5 days a year annual leave. An employee is happy, they sign, we've both agreed. It automatically supersedes your workplace agreements if they are less favorable. And it is the employment contract if there is none. So I can't tell you how often I get the question, this person's worked for me for 6 months, but we don't have a contract. So in other words, they're not my employee. No, they are your employee. The Basic Conditions of Employment Act becomes your employment contract if you haven't signed one, and it is an automatically permanent employment contract. So while that's not part of this course, if you want to have a fixed term agreement with your employee for a shorter period of time, for a non-permanent period of time, you have to have an employment contract that specifies that, because in the absence of that, they're automatically permanent and full-time. Right, so the Basic Conditions of Employment Act applies to most employees and employers in South Africa. It applies to all employees who work for more than 24 hours a month. And it excludes the National Defence Force, State Security Agency, and unpaid volunteers. So just coming back to that 24 hours per month, a lot of employers have employees and then casual employees. But in terms of the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, in order for someone to truly be casual, they need to work less than 24 hours a month. Anything more than that is considered a permanent employee or full-time employee. You could have part-time employees who work more than 24 hours a month, but not 45 hours a week. But once again, that needs to be contained in an agreement between the parties that is signed up front. So here's the most important aspects of the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, starting with working hours and overtime. Working hours, it's a maximum of 45 hours per week, which are not all paid hours, just to make it more confusing. Lunch breaks are unpaid, so it's a working hour, but it's not a paid working hour. So you have 45 hours a week worked and 40 hours a week paid for if you have a 5-day worker employee. Overtime is a maximum of 10 hours per week, and it's paid at 1.5 times the normal wage, or you can give time off instead of paying extra. So you can pay them normal working hour and then give a half an hour off for every hour of overtime worked. And overtime is by agreement, so it's a voluntary process. My clients have clauses in the employment contract that stipulate that overtime is agreed to, so the employee agrees to it up front. If you don't have that, you have to agree overtime with your employees every time they have to work it, and it's voluntary. Sunday and public holidays, it's double pay or time off, so you can pay them the normal hourly wage for every hour worked and give them an hour off for every hour that they worked on a Sunday or public holiday. This causes a lot of confusion. Some people think that you have to, if you have people working on a Sunday or public holiday, you pay them the full amount and then double for all the hours worked. It doesn't work like that. If you don't work on a Sunday or public holiday, you get paid your normal daily rate, or not Sunday, but public holiday, your normal daily rate. If you work on a Sunday or public holiday, you get double their hourly rate for every hour that you worked on that day. The next one is rest periods and meal breaks. Every employee is entitled to a daily rest period of 12 consecutive hours. There must be 12 hours between the end of your shift and the start of your next shift every day. And a weekly rest of at least 36 consecutive hours, which includes a Sunday, has to be. I've had some clients who want to work 10 days on and then give the employees 3 days off. You can't do that. There must be every week a rest period of 36 consecutive hours, including a Sunday. Then there's a meal break of 1 hour after 5 hours of continuous work. It can be reduced to 30 minutes by agreement. So you'll see that there's now a lot of companies still do the 15 minutes tea break, half an hour lunch, 15 minutes tea break. The law doesn't specify that. So it's not necessary to have that. It says 1 hour of break after 5 hours of working, or you can make that 1 hour 30 minutes, but that has to be by agreement with the employees. So it's something that you would put in your employment contract. Okay, so now this is the most confusing part of the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, and it is this little word consecutive. Annual leave is 21 consecutive days per leave cycle of 12 months. 21 consecutive days, consecutive meaning one after the other without any breaks. So in other words, if you take your full leave entitlement, you get 21 days one after the other, but obviously you don't work on every day of the week. So it's not 21 paid days per leave cycle. It's only the working days in those 21 days that you get paid for. So if you take 3 weeks in total, you only get paid for the days that you would have worked in those three weeks, which equates to 15 working days for a 5-day worker and 18 working days for a 6-day worker. So if the employees want to take their leave during the year, scatter it, they aren't entitled to 21 days of leave if they break it apart. They're only entitled to the working days that they would have worked during those 21 consecutive days. It's paid at the normal wage for the working days during that period. And when annual leave is depleted, it becomes unpaid leave until the next leave cycle starts, even during compulsory shutdowns. So your 12-month leave cycle starts on the day that you are employed. I also see a lot of employers trying to make annual leave cycle from January to December. That's wrong. Every person has their own annual leave cycle, and it's 12 months from the date of employment, and then on the anniversary, your new annual leave starts. If you have a compulsory shutdown period, a lot of companies do, your employees need to keep their annual leave for that period. If they use their annual leave during the year and they get to the shutdown period, you can pay them only the annual leave that they have accumulated. The rest is unpaid. So what you could do is borrow from the next year and give them that and let them go into a minus, or just unpaid and next year do better planning. So that's how annual leave works. Sick leave, also very misunderstood. It's a period of working days in a 6-week time frame. Okay, so 30 days paid sick leave in a 30-month cycle for a 5-day worker, 36 days paid sick leave in a 36-month cycle for a 6-day worker. Your leave cycle also runs from the date on which you were employed for 36 months. You cannot break it into 10 days per year, employers. Can't do that. Employee is entitled to use all of those 30 or 36 days of sick leave in the first year, but once it's finished, it's finished. So if they've used 30 days of sick leave in year 1, then in year 2 and in year 3, they will have no sick leave entitlement. Doesn't mean they can't take sick leave. It means they don't get paid for sick leave. So bringing a doctor's note or whatever doesn't change that. When it's finished, it's finished. And then the rest, until your new leave cycle starts, all of your sick leave will be unpaid. Then, importantly, in the first 6 months of employment, you get 1 day of sick leave for every 26 days worked. So in the first 6 months of employment, if your employee hasn't worked for 26 days and they want to take a day's sick leave, even with a doctor's note, they can take the sick leave, but you don't have to pay them. And then you deduct whatever they used in the first 6 months from their first leave cycle. And like I said, when sick leave is depleted, it becomes unpaid until the next sick leave cycle. You don't have to keep paying just because someone brings doctor's notes. They can be off sick, but it's unpaid. Unfortunately, when it's finished, it's finished. Family responsibility leave, it only kicks in after 4 months of employment. It's also something that is quite misunderstood and often very abused. It's 3 days per year, not 3 days per incident. And it's for the illness of your child or the death of an immediate family member. Only first-line relatives, your parents, your grandparents, your siblings, and your children or adopted children, okay? And it's only for the illness of a child, not if your wife is sick, not if your granny is sick. That's not covered by family responsibility leave. And importantly, the employer may require proof. If you've taken your child to the doctor and they've been booked off, you get a doctor's note from the doctor booking your child off and you present that as evidence. Okay, so I'm going to go into leave in a bit more depth here because it's very misunderstood and like I said, a lot of companies get it wrong. So it's a statutory entitlement. It means it's regulated by law and it must be granted. There's bargaining councils that can vary the amount and conditions. So every employer needs to make sure whether they fall under the provisions of a bargaining council and then investigate if the bargaining council is given more leave or different types of leave or that kind of thing. It must be communicated to employees in writing in the employment contract, and that's by law, and it should be applied for on a formal document called a leave form. Once it's used up, it's unpaid. Okay, so these are the types of statutory leave, and we're going to unpack them nicely now. Annual leave, sick leave, family responsibility leave, and then the most addition to the Basic Conditions of Employment Act is parental leave, and I'm going to unpack that in detail as well. Annual leave, 21 consecutive days, meaning one after the other, includes weekends and days off, and those are not paid. I've gone into quite a lot of detail already. So the number of working days one would normally work in 3 consecutive weeks, and it equates to 15 days working leave, working days leave for a 5-day worker, and 18 working days for a 6-day worker. Annual leave can be taken all at the same time or can be taken piecemeal, but it must be applied for in advance and it must be approved. You can't have your employee phoning you when they're already absent and saying, I want to take leave for today. That's why it's important to have a leave form and a leave policy in place. Your leave must be applied for and the management must approve it before you go on leave. Generally, that's at least a few weeks before. Otherwise, you can't just, an employee can't just tell you they are taking leave. It has to be approved by the company because it has to be operationally valid. It must make sense operationally. If you've already got 10 people on leave and you only have 11 employees, extra employee cannot just take leave. You can decline it. Can be declined at the discretion of management. A lot of employees think because it's my legal entitlement, I could just take it. But it has to be by agreement about when you take it. All leave for a particular leave cycle must be taken within 6 months after completion of the leave cycle. So if your employees haven't used up all their leave and 6 months later they still haven't used all their leave, you must inform them that there's so much leave left and you must take it, otherwise you're going to forfeit it. And each person has their own leave cycle based on their start date. Okay, we'll dealt with that. Okay, Also, sick leave requirements. Sick leave needs to be applied for and approved. So the employee has to phone you on the first day of